How tiny steps defeat procrastination. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad you're here today because we're going to dive into a topic that touches every single one of us at some point. Procrastination. We've all been there, staring at a blank screen, a messy desk, or a long list of tasks, and instead of getting started, we scroll, snack, or promise ourselves we'll do it later. But later often doesn't come, and the more we delay, the heavier the burden becomes. That's why today we're talking about something powerful, simple, and life-changing. How tiny steps can defeat procrastination once and for all. When people think about productivity, they often picture massive leaps, overnight transformations, and bold, sweeping changes. But the truth is, life rarely works that way. Progress is usually quiet, small, and steady. And that's exactly where the magic lies. You don't need to climb the entire mountain today. You just need to take one small step upward. That tiny step may not feel significant at the moment, but it carries the weight of momentum, and momentum is what beats procrastination. Procrastination is often misunderstood. It's not always laziness or lack of discipline. In fact, procrastination is more often about fear, perfectionism, and overwhelm. We look at a big task and our brains immediately exaggerate how hard or painful it will be. So we avoid it, we delay it, we distract ourselves. The problem is, the longer we delay, the bigger the monster grows in our minds. But when you take a small step, the smallest possible action, something amazing happens. The task shrinks, the fear fades, and suddenly, the impossible becomes possible. Let me share a quick story. Imagine a writer who dreams of finishing a book. Every time they sit down, they're haunted by the thought of producing 300 perfect pages. That mountain seems impossible. So they procrastinate. But what if, instead, they told themselves, "Today, I'll just write one sentence. That's it. Just one." It sounds almost too easy, right? But here's the trick. That single sentence often leads to a paragraph, then a page, and before they know it, progress is being made. The small step wasn't just a step, it was the doorway to momentum. And momentum is stronger than motivation because it carries you forward once you begin. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, which basically means our brains hate leaving things unfinished. Once you start something, even if it's small, your mind naturally wants to continue. So by taking the tiniest step, you trigger your brain's desire to keep going. That's why just opening a book, just lacing your shoes, or just typing the first word can break the cycle of procrastination. The hardest part is not the work itself, it's getting started. Think about it this way. Procrastination thrives in the gap between "I should do this" and "I'm doing this." The longer you stay in that gap, the harder it becomes to cross. But a small step is like building a bridge over that gap. Suddenly, you're not stuck in indecision. You're moving. And movement, no matter how small, is progress. Now let's talk about why small steps are so powerful for your brain. When you imagine a huge goal, losing 50 pounds, writing a thesis, starting a business, your brain sees a massive, intimidating picture. It triggers stress, and stress leads to avoidance. But when you break it down into the tiniest step, your brain relaxes. Instead of thinking, "I have to run a marathon," it thinks, "I'll just put on my running shoes." Instead of thinking, "I need to write 10 pages," it thinks, "I'll just open the document." This shift lowers the barrier to entry, making it easier to begin. And the beginning is everything. That's it. And at this point, people get smarter. I know some of you might be wondering, but won't tiny steps be too slow? Won't it take forever to reach my goals? That's a valid concern. But here's the secret. Consistency compounds. Small steps, repeated over time, create exponential growth. Think about compound interest in finance. A little bit invested consistently grows into a fortune. The same principle applies to habits and productivity. One small action every day may not look like much, but months later, it transforms your life. For example, let's say you want to learn a new language. If you commit to studying for just 5 minutes a day, that doesn't sound like much. But 5 minutes a day adds up to over 30 hours in a year. 30 hours of practice is enough to move you from a complete beginner to someone who can hold basic conversations. Tiny steps aren't about speed, they're about sustainability. And sustainability is the only way to truly defeat procrastination. The problem with procrastination is that it feeds on extremes. We say, I'll do it when I have more time, or I'll start when I feel motivated. But those moments rarely come. Life will always be busy, motivation will always fluctuate, and waiting for the perfect moment is a trap. Small steps cut through the trap because they don't require perfect timing. They don't require a surge of motivation. They just require you to start right now with whatever little you can do. Let me give you another example. Imagine someone who wants to get fit but hasn't exercised in years. If they tell themselves, tomorrow I'll run 5 miles, they're setting themselves up for failure. It's too big, too sudden. But if they tell themselves, tomorrow I'll just do 1 push-up, they can handle that. And often once they do 1, they'll think, well, I might as well do 5, then maybe 10. And suddenly the habit begins to form. That's the genius of tiny steps. They trick your brain into starting, and once you start, continuing feels natural. Another key point is that tiny steps build confidence. Procrastination often comes from self-doubt, the fear that we're not good enough, that we'll fail, that the task is beyond us. But every small step you complete is proof to yourself that you can do it. Each little win is like stacking bricks of self-belief. Over time, those bricks form a foundation of confidence strong enough to carry you through bigger challenges. Let's talk about perfectionism, because it's one of procrastination's closest friends. Perfectionists often delay tasks because they're afraid the result won't be flawless. They'd rather not start at all than risk producing something imperfect. But tiny steps defeat perfectionism by lowering the stakes. You don't have to be perfect when you're just taking a small step. You just have to begin. And once you begin, progress becomes more important than perfection. I'll share a personal reflection. There was a time when I delayed projects for weeks because I thought they needed to be extraordinary. I would overthink, plan endlessly, and wait for inspiration. But when I finally forced myself to just do one small thing, even something as simple as writing an outline or making a single phone call, the whole project started moving. It wasn't that I suddenly became more disciplined, it was that the small step removed the fear and got me into motion. This is why you'll often hear successful people say, just start. They know that once you're in motion, things fall into place. Tiny steps are the entry point to that motion. They're the crack in procrastination's armor. And once you exploit that crack, procrastination begins to crumble. Now, I want you to imagine your own life for a moment. Think about one area where procrastination has held you back. Maybe it's your studies, your health, your career, or even a personal dream. Instead of asking yourself, how can I finish this huge task? Ask, what is the tiniest possible step I can take right now? It might be opening a document, making a single phone call, or writing down 3 ideas. Whatever it is, do it now. Don't wait for later. Because later is where procrastination lives, but now is where progress begins. Tiny steps also create a sense of achievement. When you finish even a small task, your brain releases dopamine, the feel-good chemical. This reward makes you want to keep going. So instead of procrastinating and feeling guilty, you're creating a cycle of action and reward. That's a much more powerful loop to be in. Remember, procrastination isn't defeated in one giant battle. It's defeated in 1,000 small victories. Each tiny step is a victory, and those victories add up to transformation. So as you leave this video today, I want you to carry this thought with you. You don't need to be extraordinary to make progress. You don't need massive bursts of energy or endless willpower. You just need the courage to take one tiny step. That's all it takes to begin rewriting your story. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope this video has inspired you to rethink the way you approach procrastination and to embrace the power of small steps. If you found value in this message, please make sure to hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a boost, And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. By subscribing, you'll join a community of people committed to growth, motivation, and positive change. And remember, it's not about giant leaps, it's about the small, steady steps that lead to greatness. Until next time, keep moving forward, one tiny step at a time.